Welcome to the review of the Kiwi Ears Quintet. 5 drivers, $200+. Okay, 4 drivers and a bone conduction thing, but they call it 5 drivers, so I'm gonna go with that. 5 drivers, $200 to $250. Will it hold its own? How does it compare with things that are half its price, given that the $100 price point is so good these days? Is it worth upgrading to a $200+ IEM in today's world? And also, how does it compare with other IEMs in the $200 price point? And just to make it a little bit more spicy, we'll compare it with 2 planar IEMs. So we're giving it a run for its money. First thing you notice with the Kiwi Ears Quintet is it comes with this really nice case. Reasonably slim, not too blocky, maybe something you can actually use with a pair of cargo trousers if those things ever come back. But it also comes with 2 sets of ear tips, a black and a clear ear tip. Now they do make a little bit of a difference, so we'll get back to that in a bit. The cable that comes with it is nice and thick, although honestly I have seen better cables in the $200 price point. Now I don't care, as long as it works, but I've seen better, now I want better. And I know some of you care a lot, so if you want to replace the cable, it's a 2-pin connector, so you can buy your own third-party cable, and Bob's your uncle, Thelma's your aunt. No idea why I said that. It's got a 3.5mm jack, and all the little fittings all seem to be metal. The IEM itself is not for the smallest ears. It's got a semi-custom design, but in my ear it seems to fit quite comfortably, although that fit deserves a little bit more delving into. We will get to that with the sound signature. The faceplate is a nice brushed metal look. It's very simple, very elegant, and a sea of IEMs full of colors and swirls, which is amazing. This is something that won't offend anyone and look nice and classy. Who doesn't like that? But all that is moot if it doesn't sound good. No idea why I said that. Meaning, how does it sound? Well, okay, it sounds a bit like this. And if you've seen one of these before, you're in the right place. If you haven't seen one of these before, first of all, you need to subscribe to this channel. We've spoken about this way too many times, but we'll do it again. This, what you see on the screen right now, is basically a representation of how loud this IEM or this earphone represents each and every frequency in the human hearing spectrum. So for example, these frequencies over here, that's the bass, and you can see that it's a little elevated. It will always be. For IEMs, they have to be a little elevated to sort of get close to that speaker in a room feeling. Then you've got the mid-range and the treble. So let's start with the bass. Now, just listening to it subjectively, this reminds me of the Truthier Clinical Project Red in terms of bass, because the mid-bass punch is not that outright explosive punch that a lot of people love and some IEMs out there do deliver. Instead, it's a little bit more subdued and a little bit less tight and punchy, but you've got that nice even sub bass. It's reasonably well extended in the sub bass. It's got texture and it's nice and even. It's like a nice subwoofer in a nice room, which is exactly the same feeling the Project Red gave me, and I like it. I like it. If you listen to a lot of movie soundtracks and stuff, this is going to sound pretty nice in the bass department for sure. Again, that outright explosive mid-bass bump that some people crave, that's not quite going to be there, but it still has enough punch there as well. Now, there is one little caveat to the bass. The fit of this is very comfortable in my ear, but there's 2 ways to wear this, right? One is you just put it on like so and leave it. Just squeeze it in there, leave it, and you're fine. And it sounds like it measures more or less, so that's great. But then if I try to really get that fit good and I do that, at least for my ears, and this could just be a my ear thing, there's something about the silicone tips that actually breaks the seal a little bit and I lose bass response. So I mean, I guess it's kind of like having 2 tunings in one. If I just leave it there and just push it in a little bit, I get everything. If I push it in a little more, I get a more secure fit, but I also lose a little bit of bass, and that ends up sounding more open and wide if you want a more neutral-ish bass. So there's that. Overall, I would recommend you play with it and listen out for that bass and see if you're getting the right amount or not. As for the mid-range, I don't have much to say about it because it's quite nice. Timbre seemed for the most part pretty okay. Male vocals, female vocals all seem largely on point, and yeah, nothing seems overly muddied by that bass. Nothing seems overly pushed forward either. This is actually pretty well tuned in the mids. Now, female vocals do seem to have a sharp edge, and there's a little bit of that sharp edgedness later on in the treble as well. So there is some unevenness there, but honestly, 2 things. Number one, changing the tips from the black tips to the translucent tips, which I've got on right here because they work better, fixed that issue for me at least. So that sharp edge went away, at least in the female vocals. There's still a little bit of unevenness here and there, but honestly, this is really, really nicely tuned in the mids and the highs for the most part. Now, in that treble range, I will say that it is not overly emphasized, it's not overly bright and sparkly, but it's got just enough for the sparkle to be there without being fatiguing. The whole IEM experience here is completely non-fatiguing to my ears at least, and I like that. But there's really no point unless we actually compare it with other things. So the first question is, if you're in the $100 IEM space, is it worth pushing to the $200 IEM space based on things like the Kiwi Ears Quintet? And the answer is a resounding yes. Compared to the Hexa, the Olina, this is a marked improvement in detail, in resolution, in finesse. There is a clear differentiation here. All the instruments seem a little more open, a little more well separated, even compared to things like the Hexa or the SimGod EA500. This is better, more nuanced, more natural sounding, really, really good. So straight away, I can tell you it's worth jumping the extra $100 because you get what I think is a proportional increase in performance. Now, how does it compare with planar IEMs in the same price point? Take for instance the Zishan Wu. That has a little more bass and therefore a little more outright bass punch, which is all fun and all, but in terms of actual quality of bass, they're not that dissimilar, which is actually high praise for the Kiwi Ears Quintet. Even compared to the Timeless, which to my ears, the Timeless is just a notch above the Zishan Wu in some areas, although the Zishan Wu is cheaper and gives it a good run for its money. For me, the Quintet is actually better. Here's why. On those planar IEMs, when you listen to, say, someone strumming a guitar, right? Each string, you hear each pluck of each string. It's all very tight, very fast, planar IEM stuff. But in between each pluck of each string, there are sounds that sort of meld with each other. They interact with each other. There's harmonics present, and that creates this bouquet of sound. And without sounding too flowery and audiophiliac, here's the deal. The Quintet seems to reproduce that in a much more natural way and a more relaxing way, while still sounding more resolving because it's able to get all those little details in between each pluck of each string. And that, to me, is, I mean, it's holding its own against planars in the same price category. That is pretty darn good. Imagine that, it's actually going up against planars and holding its own. That is something. So in summation, I think for $200 you get a quality IEM, good build quality and construction, for the most part good ergonomics, at least for the larger eared amongst us, and really solid sound. A proper step up from the $100, $120 price category, and easily holding its own against planar IEMs in the same price category. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. The Kiwi Ears Quintet, ladies and gentlemen. Hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste.